Hello, I'm SA, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The story begins not with abstract pronouncements, but with a tangible challenge of the frustrating inertia within the medical establishment. Picture the early 2000s, a period brimming with the promise of the genomic revolution. Humanity held the blueprint of life itself, a vast, intricate code waiting to be deciphered and applied to the betterment of health. Yet, translating this burgeoning knowledge into practical clinical applications proved incredibly difficult. The sheer volume of data, the complexity of genetic interactions, and the inherent uncertainties of predicting disease risk presented formidable hurdles. Moreover, the existing regulatory landscape, primarily designed for the approval of single-compound pharmaceuticals, was ill-suited for the nuanced world of genetic diagnostics. This mismatch created a significant bottleneck, a frustrating disconnect between scientific advancement and tangible patient benefit. Access to comprehensive genetic screening remained prohibitively expensive and complicated, limiting its availability to a privileged few. This was the landscape Balaji Srinivasan encountered during his doctoral work at Stanford University. His focus was not merely theoretical, it was deeply practical. He saw a critical problem, a failure of the system to effectively deploy transformative technology. His response was not a lament, but an act of creation. He co-founded Counsyl, a company aiming to revolutionize genetic screening. The problem, in his view, was not a lack of scientific understanding, but a failure of infrastructure and a rigid, outdated regulatory environment. Counsyl's innovative approach directly addressed this systemic issue. The company's strategy involved a multifaceted solution, a clever combination of automation, cutting-edge bioinformatics, and a novel direct-to-consumer/physician model. By automating many aspects of the genetic testing process, Counsyl drastically reduced costs. Sophisticated bioinformatics algorithms were employed to analyze the vast amounts of genetic data, providing clinicians with clear, actionable insights. The direct-to-consumer element bypassed the traditional, often slow and expensive, pathways of medical testing, making the service far more accessible to patients. This approach demonstrated a fundamental shift in perspectives. Technology could be used not only to improve the science, but also to circumvent the systemic barriers preventing the widespread adoption of that science. Counsyl's success was a powerful demonstration of the power of technological disruption. The company achieved remarkable growth, expanding access to affordable carrier screening to a vast number of individuals. This success was not simply a commercial triumph, it was a potent statement about the potential of technology to overcome institutional inertia. The company's strategy showcased a profound understanding of the interplay between scientific innovation and the practical realities of the implementation. Srinivasan's work at Counsyl was not an isolated incident. It established a pattern, a recurring theme that would define his subsequent intellectual and entrepreneurial endeavors. The core of Srinivasan's worldview, evident even in this early work, centers on the idea that technological innovation can and should be used to challenge and overcome the limitations of existing systems. He identified a significant problem, limited access to life-altering technology due to regulatory and infrastructural bottlenecks, and developed a creative, technologically driven solution that bypassed those limitations. This approach, characterized by a willingness to challenge established norms and embrace direct, efficient solutions, would become a hallmark of his future projects. Counsyl's impact extends far beyond its commercial success. It serves as a foundational case study illustrating Srinivasan's distinctive approach to problem solving. The company's model, a powerful blend of automation, advanced bioinformatics, and a novel distribution strategy, demonstrated the potential for technology to address not only scientific challenges, but also the systemic obstacles that impede the translation of scientific breakthroughs into tangible benefits for individuals. This early venture provides essential context for understanding the trajectory of his subsequent work, which would increasingly focus on the intersection of technology, governance, and the creation of alternative systems. The seeds of his broader intellectual framework, a framework that would challenge conventional economic and political models, were sown in this initial foray into the world of medical technology. The focus was not on incremental improvements within the existing system, but on creating a new, more efficient and accessible pathway. This initial success established a crucial precedent, a powerful demonstration of the power of technological disruption to overcome systemic barriers. The story of Counsyl is not simply a tale of entrepreneurial success. It is a compelling illustration of a core principle that would inform and shape Srinivasan's subsequent work, extending far beyond the realm of medical technology. It is a story about the power of technology to reshape entire industries, to challenge entrenched interests, and to create new pathways to progress. It is a story about identifying systemic failure and creatively circumventing it through innovation. And it is a narrative that lays the groundwork for understanding the broader intellectual project that would follow. The problems Counsyl solved and the methods employed serve as a microcosm of the larger challenges and solutions Srinivasan would later champion. The digital scaffolding building the on-ramp at Coinbase, having established his reputation for identifying and dismantling systemic bottlenecks, Balaji Srinivasan next turned his attention to a domain undergoing its own period of rapid, chaotic evolution, the nascent world of cryptocurrencies. The transition from the highly regulated, scientifically rigorous environment of Counsyl to the comparatively uncharted territory of digital assets may seem, at first glance, a radical departure. However, a closer examination reveals a consistent strategy, a continuous thread of thought. It was a shift, a scaling of the core principles that had guided his earlier work. His move to Coinbase in the mid-2010s was not merely a career change. It was a strategic positioning, a thoughtful deployment of his accumulated expertise into a field poised to fundamentally alter the landscape of finance and technology. The prevailing climate surrounding cryptocurrencies during this period was complex. While the promise of decentralized digital currencies captured the imagination of a dedicated quarter of cypherpunks and early adopters, mainstream acceptance remained elusive. The technology itself was often perceived as complex, even arcane, a domain for technical specialists and enthusiasts. The value of digital assets was volatile, subject to wild swings that deterred many potential participants. Moreover, the regulatory environment was uncertain, adding another layer of complexity and risk. The central challenge, then, was multifaceted. It was a challenge of building trust, of ensuring security, and of establishing the scalability necessary to transition cryptocurrency from a niche interest to a viable platform for widespread adoption. This was, in essence, an infrastructure problem, a user experience problem, and a problem of establishing credibility. Srinivasan's role as Chief Technology Officer at Coinbase presented a unique opportunity to address these challenges head-on. He recognized the crucial need for a bridge and on-ramp that would allow individuals and institutions to safely and easily enter the burgeoning crypto economy. His technical leadership focused on constructing the industrial-grade infrastructure essential for mass adoption. This meant building systems that were secure, reliable, and compliant with evolving regulatory standards. It meant designing a user experience that was intuitive and accessible, even for those with minimal prior exposure to the technology. The vision was clear: to transform Coinbase into a trusted platform, a gateway to a new financial future. The solution Srinivasan championed was, in some ways, paradoxical. It involved creating a centralized entity, a company, to facilitate access to a decentralized ecosystem. This approach, however, was a pragmatic necessity. In the early stages of any new technological paradigm, a degree of centralization often serves as a crucial catalyst. It provides a focal point for development, a source of trust, and a mechanism for scaling. Coinbase, under Srinivasan's guidance, became a critical point of aggregation, a place where users could confidently interact with digital assets, knowing their funds were secured and a platform was operating within the bounds of the law. This emphasis on building a robust and secure platform was paramount. It involved rigorous testing, sophisticated security protocols, and proactive engagement with regulators. The goal was to establish Coinbase as a reliable and reputable institution, a company that would not only survive but thrive in the face of the inevitable scrutiny that came with its position at the vanguard of a new technological frontier. This was not simply a matter of technical prowess. It was a strategic imperative, a necessary step in the process of legitimizing the entire crypto space. The impact of Srinivasan's work at Coinbase extended far beyond the immediate functionality of the platform. His efforts helped to shape the narrative surrounding cryptocurrencies, moving them from the fringes of technological discourse to the mainstream. By demonstrating the viability of a user-friendly and secure platform, Coinbase played a pivotal role in attracting a broader audience. This, in turn, fueled further innovation, attracting developers, investors, and entrepreneurs to the space. His leadership at Coinbase, therefore, served as a critical proof of concept. It offered a practical demonstration of how to solve the cold start problem, the challenge of building a thriving ecosystem from scratch. It showed how to attract users, build trust, and establish the foundational infrastructure necessary for exponential growth. The work at Coinbase was a critical step in realizing Srinivasan's broader vision, a future where technology empowers individuals and disrupts traditional power structures. This work at Coinbase was, in a very real sense, an extension of the core principles that had guided his work at Counsyl. It was about identifying systemic inefficiencies, creating innovative solutions, and building the infrastructure necessary to facilitate a more equitable and efficient future. It was about recognizing the potential for technology to reshape industries, to empower individuals, and to create entirely new possibilities. The problems he addressed at Coinbase and the solutions he implemented would become crucial building blocks for the larger intellectual project that was taking shape. It laid the groundwork for the next phase of his evolution, a phase where he would transition from an operator to a primary theorist and capital allocator, formalizing his ad hoc solutions into a coherent investment philosophy. The stage was set for a new act, the transition from building infrastructure at Coinbase to shaping investment strategy. At Andreessen Horowitz marked a significant inflection point. Srinivasan moved from the operational trenches of a nascent industry to a position where he could influence the flow of capital and articulate the intellectual underpinnings of technological disruption on a much grander scale. The venture capital landscape of the early to mid-2010s faced a pressing challenge: how to systematically identify and capitalize on the next wave of foundational technological change. The mobile revolution had matured. Cloud computing was becoming ubiquitous infrastructure, and the industry sought predictive frameworks to navigate the increasingly complex intersection of software, biology, and decentralized systems. The question was how to move beyond ad hoc bets driven by intuition, establishing a rigorous methodology for spotting truly transformative potential in fields that defy traditional analysis, particularly those involving novel incentive structures and community dynamics like cryptocurrencies. Furthermore, communicating this vision effectively, articulating the why behind massive investments in seemingly abstract, or volatile technologies, presented a significant intellectual and rhetorical task. Assuming the role of general partner at A16Z provided Srinivasan with a platform to formalize the insights gleaned from his prior ventures. He became a central intellectual voice within the firm and the broader tech ecosystem, translating his experiences in building and scaling disruptive technologies into coherent investment theses. His contribution extended beyond deal-making. He actively shaped the narratives that would guide a generation of entrepreneurs and investors. This period saw the popularization of several key ideas, perhaps none more influential than the concept he championed extensively Web3. Srinivasan framed crypto assets and blockchain technology as far more than digital currencies or speculative instruments. He articulated a vision where these technologies formed the bedrock of a new internet paradigm, one characterized by decentralization, user ownership, and novel forms of coordination. This was an intellectual leap, connecting disparate technical components like distributed ledgers, smart contracts, and token economics into a compelling narrative about the future of online interaction and value creation. He posited that the centralized platforms dominating the internet represented a single point of failure, susceptible to censorship, data exploitation, and rent-seeking behavior. Web3, as he described it, offered an architectural alternative empowering individuals and communities through verifiable digital ownership and programmable agreements. His essays, talks, and public appearances during this time served as a kind of intellectual cartography for the emerging decentralized world. He provided the language and conceptual frameworks necessary to understand the potential of decentralized autonomous organizations, non-fungible tokens, and other elements of the burgeoning crypto ecosystem. This intellectual work was crucial. It provided the theoretical justification for significant capital allocation into sectors that many traditional investors viewed with skepticism or confusion. By articulating a clear, if ambitious, vision for user-owned internet, he helped transform crypto from a niche interest into a major investment theme, attracting both financial capital and entrepreneurial talent. This framing of Web3 represented a unique solution to the problem of identifying the next technological frontier. Instead of analyzing market trends in isolation, Srinivasan offered a systems-level perspective, viewing the rise of decentralized technologies as a reaction to the inherent limitations and power dynamics of the existing internet architecture. His thesis suggested that the value would accrue not merely to applications built on these new protocols, but to the protocols themselves and the networks they enabled. This provided a framework for evaluating potential investments based on their contribution to building this new decentralized infrastructure and enabling novel forms of digital organization and ownership. It was an approach that synthesized technical understanding with economic theory and a deep appreciation for the historical cycles of technological platforms. Consider the thesis software is eating bio, another area where Srinivasan's intellectual contributions were prominent. This idea, popularized within A16Z, suggested that the principles and methodologies of software development, rapid iteration, data-driven analysis, automation, could be applied to the complex challenges of biology and medicine. His background in bioinformatics and his experience with Counsyl provided a unique vantage point to understand this convergence. He saw how computational tools and data science were transforming biological research and development, promising faster drug discovery, personalized medicine, and more efficient diagnostics. This thesis guided investments in companies operating at this intersection, demonstrating his ability to identify profound shifts occurring at the boundaries of established disciplines. The impact of Srinivasan's work at Andreessen Horowitz is undeniable. His intellectual leadership helped define the Web3 era of venture capital, influencing investment strategies across the industry and channeling billions of dollars into decentralized technologies. His ability to translate complex technical concepts into compelling narratives demonstrated the power of an investor to shape the market through ideas, providing a conceptual roadmap that aligned financial incentives with a particular vision of technological progress. This period solidified his reputation as a futurist and a key figure in articulating the potential of decentralized systems to reshape not only the internet, but society itself. His work at the firm provided a concrete example of how intellectual frameworks can drive capital allocation and influence the direction of technological development on a massive scale. It was a period where his distinct worldview, honed through years of building and operating at the edge of innovation, found a powerful amplifier, transforming personal insights into widely adopted industry theses. These ideas, articulated and funded during his tenure as 16Z, would subsequently face real-world tests, particularly concerning the reliability of decentralized information networks in times of crisis. The stage was being set for a high-stakes examination of these very principles. The tumultuous early months of the COVID-19 pandemic presented a global crisis of unprecedented scale and complexity. Across continents, societies grappled with a bewildering barrage of emerging data, shifting scientific consensus, and a profound erosion of public trust in established institutions. Governments and public health organizations, tasked with navigating this uncharted territory, often found themselves reacting rather than leading, their pronouncements frequently perceived as belated, contradictory, or unduly influenced by political considerations. This created an information vacuum, a fertile ground for confusion and anxiety, leaving populations desperate for clarity and reliable guidance. It was within this crucible of uncertainty that Balaji Srinivasan's distinctive perspective, forged in the crucible of technological innovation and decentralized systems, found its most potent and visible real-world application. Srinivasan embraced this period not merely as a public health emergency, but as a critical, real-time stress test for his long-held convictions about the inherent limitations of centralized, bureaucratic structures and the emergent power of decentralized, rapid response networks. His approach diverged sharply from the prevailing orthodoxies of public health communication and strategy. While many adhered to the cautious, consensus-driven methodologies of traditional scientific bodies, Srinivasan championed a radically different paradigm. He advocated for the immediate, open analysis of preprint scientific data, often before it had undergone formal peer review. He championed citizen-led data-gathering initiatives, believing that distributed intelligence could offer valuable insights. Crucially, he argued for aggressive, early action based on probabilistic reasoning, even when faced with incomplete information, a stance that often placed him at odds with the more measured, incremental approaches favored by established authorities like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization. His pronouncements, disseminated widely through platforms such as Twitter, became a focal point for those disillusioned with official narratives. Srinivasan articulated a vision of information processing that mirrored the dynamism and adaptability he saw in the digital realm. He posited that in an era of rapid technological advancement and global interconnectedness, the traditional gatekeepers of knowledge were becoming impediments rather than facilitators. He argued that the speed at which information could be generated, shared, and analyzed within decentralized networks offered a crucial advantage in confronting fast-moving crises. This perspective encouraged a form of radical transparency in data sharing and a willingness to embrace uncertainty as a precursor to decisive action. Examining Srinivasan's predictions and arguments from this period reveals a fascinating interplay of prescience and error, offering a compelling case study in the strengths and weaknesses of this alternative information processing system. He was among the early voices to emphasize the potential for airborne transmission of the virus, a concept that gained broader acceptance over time. His discussions around the implications of viral shedding and the limitations of surface transmission, while sometimes couched in probabilistic terms that invited debate, often reflected a keen intuition for the unfolding epidemiological landscape. He frequently highlighted the importance of early intervention, advocating for measures that, in retrospect, many acknowledge could have mitigated the pandemic's severity if adopted more broadly and sooner. His emphasis on the potential for a widespread asymptomatic spread and the subsequent need for widespread testing and contact tracing presaged key elements of the global response. However, this period also illuminated the inherent challenges of operating at the bleeding edge of information dissemination. The very speed and openness that Srinivasan championed could also lead to the amplification of unverified claims and the creation of alternative narratives that sometimes diverged significantly from established scientific consensus. The probabilistic nature of his pronouncements, while intended to reflect the inherent uncertainties of a novel pathogen, occasionally led to interpretations that bordered on deterministic predictions, creating expectations that were difficult to meet. The decentralized model, while agile, also lacked the robust, institutionalized mechanisms for error correction and validation that characterized traditional scientific bodies. This meant that while individual insights could be remarkably accurate, the overall discourse could become fragmented and susceptible to the propagation of misinformation, a phenomenon amplified by the very digital platforms Srinivasan leveraged. This episode served as a potent, high-stakes illustration of the epistemic conflicts defining the 21st century. It presented a microcosm of the broader societal tension between the perceived authority of credentialed, centralized institutions with their established protocols, peer review processes, an often slower, more deliberate pace, and the burgeoning power of decentralized information networks. These networks, characterized by their speed, accessibility, and often chaotic dynamism, offered a new mode of collective sense-making, but also posed significant challenges to traditional frameworks of knowledge validation. Srinivasan's engagement during the pandemic was a public demonstration of his belief that the latter could and should offer a more effective and responsive model for navigating complex, rapidly evolving crises. The pandemic, therefore, acted as a proving ground for Srinivasan's core thesis. It provided a stark, undeniable context for the problems he believed his proposed solutions could address. The perceived failures of established institutions to provide clear, consistent, and timely guidance highlighted the very vulnerabilities she had identified in centralized systems. The public's embrace of alternative information sources, whether reliable or not, underscored the growing disconnect between citizens and traditional authorities. Srinivasan's active participation in this unfolding drama, articulating a vision of decentralized resilience and rapid adaptation, positioned him not merely as an observer of the crisis, but as a vocal proponent of a fundamental reorientation of how societies process information and respond to existential threats. This period of intense public scrutiny and debate profoundly shaped his subsequent intellectual trajectory, solidifying his conviction that a radical reimagining of societal structures was not only desirable, but increasingly necessary. The lessons learned, both from his successes and his missteps during this critical juncture, would directly inform the ambitious blueprint for societal transformation he would soon articulate in his seminal work. The crisis had, in essence, provided an urgent, living laboratory for the ideas he had been developing for years. The contemporary world grapples with governmental structures forged in a bygone era structures increasingly ill-suited to the dynamism of the digital age. This fundamental mismatch between analog institutions and digital citizens has precipitated a profound societal malaise characterized by deep internal divisions, a palpable economic inertia, and an attenuated capacity for genuine innovation. The very fabric of governance, designed for a world of physical proximity and centralized authority, strains under the weight of global connectivity and the emergent values of digitally native populations. It is within this crucible of perceived systemic failure that Balaji Srinivasan articulated a radical proposition, a blueprint for new societal architecture, the network state. Srinivasan's 2022 book, The Network State, Building Political Power in the Digital Age, presents a meticulously detailed vision for a peaceful, voluntary successor to the traditional nation-state. The core of his argument rests on the premise that as digital communities coalesce around shared purposes and values, they can organically develop the capacity to transcend geographical limitations and establish sovereign entities. This evolution, he posits, follows a distinct life cycle, a four-stage journey from nascent online community to recognized political power. The initial phase, the genesis of a network state, begins with the founding of what Srinivasan terms a startup society. This is an online community, a digital gathering of like-minded individuals united by a common vision, a shared purpose, or a singular guiding principle. This foundational element, often distilled into what he calls the One Commandment, serves as the irreducible core of the community's identity and operational ethos. It is the guiding star, the irreducible axiom around which all subsequent activities will orbit. This online collective, while initially existing purely in the digital ether, cultivates a shared identity and a nascent sense of collective purpose that distinguishes it from ephemeral social media groups. The second stage involves the maturation of this online collective into a network union. This phase signifies the development of tangible, coordinated action and the establishment of an internal economy. Here, the community moves beyond mere shared sentiment to collective enterprise. This often involves the creation of an integrated cryptocurrency, serving not only as a medium of exchange, but also as a mechanism for governance, investment, and the distribution of resources within the union. This internal financial system fosters economic self-sufficiency and creates a tangible stake for members in the success of their collective endeavor. The network union begins to demonstrate a capacity for collective action on a scale that can rival or even surpass the efficacy of traditional governmental bodies in specific domains. The third critical step is the crowdfunding of a network archipelago. This is where the digital community begins to acquire a physical presence, extending its reach into the material world. Rather than consolidating power in a single geographical location, the network state envisions a distributed network of territories. These territories are acquired through collective financial means, essentially crowdfunding the purchase or development of physical enclaves. This archipelago model allows for flexibility and resilience, enabling the network state to establish a physical footprint without being beholden to the existing geopolitical boundaries of any single nation-state. It is an assertion of physical sovereignty built upon a foundation of digital unity and collective economic power. The culmination of this evolutionary process, the fourth and final stage, is the achievement of diplomatic recognition, thereby transforming the network union into a bona fide network state. This signifies the attainment of sovereign status, acknowledged by the existing international community. The ability to command territory, to govern a population, and to engage in international relations marks the full realization of Srinivasan's vision. The principle of exit, the voluntary departure from existing political structures in favor of these new, self-governing entities, is presented as a moral imperative. It is framed as a peaceful, evolutionary mechanism for societal progress, allowing individuals and communities to opt into governance systems that better align with their values and aspirations. Central to this entire framework is the concept of exit itself. Srinivasan argues that in an age of abundant information and global connectivity, individuals are no longer tethered to their birth nations by necessity. The ability to create and participate in alternative forms of governance, to build communities that operate on different principles, is not merely an option, but a moral imperative. The network state is presented as the ultimate expression of this principle, a mechanism for individuals to collectively opt out of failing systems and build something new. This is not a call for violent revolution or secession, but a sophisticated strategy for gradual, peaceful transition powered by digital organization and collective economic action. The integrated cryptocurrency and the focus on a singular, unifying commandment are not incidental details. They are the essential scaffolding upon which this new form of political organization is to be built, ensuring alignment, incentivizing participation, and providing a clear pathway toward sovereign existence. This detailed exposition lays the groundwork for understanding the ambitious architecture Srinivasan proposes for navigating the complexities of the 21st century. The aspiration to create alternative forms of governance, to build communities operating on different principles, is presented not merely as an option, but as a moral imperative. The network state is posited as the ultimate expression of this principle, a mechanism for individuals to collectively opt out of failing systems and construct something novel. This is not a call for violent revolution or secession, but a sophisticated strategy for gradual, peaceful transition powered by digital organization and collective economic action. The integrated cryptocurrency and the focus on a singular, unifying commandment serve as the essential scaffolding upon which this new form of political organization is to be built, ensuring alignment, incentivizing participation, and providing a clear pathway toward sovereign existence. This detailed exposition lays the groundwork for understanding the ambitious architecture Srinivasan proposes for navigating the complexities of the 21st century. The ideology of exit, as articulated through the network state thesis, invites a critical interrogation from multiple disciplinary perspectives, revealing inherent challenges and unresolved questions within its ambitious framework. The very concept of exit as a primary solution, while appealing in its promise of liberation from perceived institutional sclerosis, prompts a fundamental question from political science. Does this emphasis represent an abdication of civic responsibility to reform existing institutions? A process often termed voice. The efficacy of building new structures is undeniably compelling, yet the practicalities of abandoning the arduous, though essential, work of improving current systems warrant careful consideration. Furthermore, the network state model in its aspiration for sovereign digital communities must grapple with the hard problems of defense, law enforcement, and the provision of welfare for non-productive citizens. How are these core functions of statehood to be managed and funded within a decentralized, network-centric paradigm, particularly when these services often involve significant overhead and potential for free riding? The inherent difficulties in establishing and maintaining robust public goods in a voluntary association are substantial. From a sociological viewpoint, the proposed model raises significant concerns regarding social cohesion and pluralism. The creation of hyper-homogenized, digitally mediated enclaves, while offering a sense of belonging to like-minded individuals, risks exacerbating social fragmentation when communities form based on stringent ideological alignment and the active exclusion of dissenting viewpoints. The potential for intolerance and the erosion of broader societal bonds becomes pronounced. The very mechanisms that facilitate exit digital networks, shared belief systems, and economic coordination can inadvertently foster insularity, creating echo chambers that amplify existing divisions rather than bridging them. The challenge lies in reconciling the desire for affinity-based communities with the demands of a diverse and interconnected global society. The long-term implications for social capital and the capacity for collective action across different groups remain an open question. An economic perspective highlights potential inherent plutocratic tendencies within the model. The early stages of network state formation often rely on initial capital investment, frequently in the form of cryptocurrency, which can privilege early adopters and the technologically elite. This raises the question of whether the model is designed to democratize governance or to entrench the power of a select group of investors and innovators, preventing the recreation of extreme inequality. A persistent challenge in existing economic systems requires robust mechanisms within the network state itself. Without careful design, the very tools intended to facilitate a new form of organization could inadvertently mirror and amplify the economic disparities they aim to escape. The distribution of power and resources within these nascent sovereign entities demands scrutiny to ensure they offer genuine opportunities for broad participation and equitable benefit. The legal and practical hurdles to acquiring territory and achieving genuine sovereignty in the current geopolitical order are immense, perhaps even insurmountable. The established international system, governed by treaties, recognized borders, and the principle of state sovereignty, presents formidable obstacles to any group seeking to establish a new nation-state, particularly one that originates and operates primarily in the digital realm. The process of gaining recognition from existing states, securing physical territory, and establishing legitimate authority over a population involves complex diplomatic, legal, and often military considerations. The network state thesis, while elegantly outlining a vision for decentralized governance, must confront the entrenched realities of territorial statehood and the existing power structures that govern international relations. The transition from a digital network to a recognized sovereign entity is a leap fraught with profound and potentially prohibitive practical challenges. The reliance on the acquisition of physical land, as suggested in some interpretations of the network state framework, introduces a layer of tangible difficulty that digital organization alone cannot fully overcome. The ability to bypass or transcend these existing structures requires a level of innovation and influence that is yet to be fully demonstrated on a global scale. The trajectory of Balaji Srinivasan's intellectual pursuits reveals a consistent engagement with the perceived ossification of established institutions, from his early ventures into challenging regulatory frameworks to his later conceptualizations of entirely new forms of societal organization. A unifying principle emerges: the diagnosis of systemic inertia and the proposition of technologically enabled exit as a potent remedy. This thread weaves through his work, connecting the practicalities of his entrepreneurial endeavors with the grander philosophical architecture of his later theories. Srinivasan's early career, particularly his involvement with Counsyl, presented a direct confrontation with the cumbersome mechanisms of medical regulation. The Food and Drug Administration, a venerable body tasked with ensuring public safety, also represented, in the eyes of many innovators, a significant impediment to the rapid deployment of life-saving technologies. Counsyl's mission to democratize genetic screening, making sophisticated diagnostic tools accessible and affordable, inherently involved navigating these established channels. The very act of seeking approval, of engaging with a system designed for a different era of scientific and technological advancement, highlighted the friction between innovation and institutional inertia. This experience, formative in its own right, provided a tangible, real-world illustration of the problems he would later address on a broader societal scale. It was an immersion into the practical difficulties of moving groundbreaking ideas through entrenched bureaucratic structures. This engagement with institutional friction extended into his role at Coinbase. The advent of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology presented a fundamental challenge to the existing global financial architecture. Traditional banking systems, with their centuries-old infrastructure, regulatory oversight, and established hierarchies, represented the very embodiment of institutional continuity. Coinbase, as a platform facilitating access to this nascent digital asset ecosystem, operated at the vanguard of this disruption. Srinivasan's involvement here underscored a growing conviction that technological innovation could offer viable alternatives and, indeed, superior efficiencies to deeply entrenched legacy systems. The ability to transfer value, to conduct transactions, and to build financial instruments outside the purview of traditional intermediaries offered a compelling vision of an emergent digital infrastructure capable of bypassing or supplanting established norms. This period solidified his understanding of how digital networks could reconfigure fundamental aspects of human coordination, particularly in the economic sphere. The public discourse surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic provided a crucible for Srinivasan's critique of institutional narratives. As global events unfolded with unprecedented speed and uncertainty, he became a prominent voice questioning established authorities and the information disseminated by mainstream institutions. His advocacy for a more decentralized, distributed approach to information verification and decision-making mirrored his earlier technological and economic critiques. The perceived failures in communication, the perceived inconsistencies in policy, and the perceived overreach of centralized authority during this period fueled his conviction that established institutions, when faced with novel challenges, often struggled to adapt effectively. He articulated a perspective that elevated individual agency and decentralized networks as more resilient and adaptable mechanisms for navigating complex crises. This phase of his intellectual development was characterized by direct challenge to the prevailing modes of public discourse and institutional authority. The culmination of this intellectual journey is the network state. This ambitious concept represents a theoretical framework for a new form of political and social organization, one that arises from and operates within the digital realm, ultimately seeking to establish a sovereign presence in the physical world. The network state thesis posits that the nation-state, as conceived in the Westphalian tradition, is an increasingly anachronistic and inefficient model for coordinating human activity in the 21st century. Srinivasan argues that the inherent sclerosis of these legacy structures, their bureaucratic bloat, their resistance to change, their often unresponsive nature creates opportunities for new forms of organization to emerge. These new entities, routed in digital networks, can foster community, mobilize resources, and cultivate shared purpose with a speed and agility that traditional states find difficult to match. The unifying thread across these distinct phases of his career is a profound belief in institutional sclerosis as the paramount problem of our era, and a persistent conviction that technologically enabled exit offers the most promising solution. Whether it is exiting the FTA's regulatory labyrinth, exiting the traditional financial system, or ultimately exiting the confines of the existing nation-state model, the core idea remains consistent. Srinivasan's work consistently points towards the creation of parallel, decentralized structures that can offer superior alternatives to the perceived limitations of established institutions. He frames this not merely as a critique, but as a call to action, an invitation to build the future, rather than lament the shortcomings of the present. The ultimate significance of Balaji Srinivasan's contributions may reside less in the precise, practical blueprint for a fully realized network state, and more in his creation of a potent and cohesive mythos for a particular segment of the technological elite. He has meticulously constructed an end-to-end narrative, beginning with a sharp diagnosis of institutional decay and culminating in a radical prescription for a future governed by emergent networks and decentralized principles. This narrative provides a compelling, internally consistent framework for understanding the challenges of our time and for envisioning a dramatically different future social contract. Srinivasan's legacy, therefore, is that of an intellectual architect. He has provided the language, the vision, and the conceptual scaffolding for a potential and profoundly disruptive transformation of global society. His work invites contemplation on the desirability and ultimate feasibility of the world he describes, a world where sovereignty itself might be reimagined, detached from the traditional moorings of territory and inherited authority, and instead anchored in the fluid, dynamic, and ever-expanding landscape of the digital network. He has articulated a powerful vision for a future that, whether fully realized or not, will undoubtedly shape the aspirations and anxieties of those who seek to build it.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.